Ok, direi che possiamo partire. A te la parola, Paola.
Buonasera a tutti.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our last event in the initiative All for Climate by the Italian Minister for the pre-COP for the youth and the one now in Milan. Today is our last event, and it's at the end of a path that lasted around 1 year. And it supported young activists, but not only. In the run-up to these important events, we have a video that today we would like to show you.
Chiedo alla regia quando è pronto.
On Christmas Eve, 1968, astronaut Bill Anders snapped a photo of the Earth as Apollo 8 orbited the moon. Those three guys were surprised to see from their eyes a planet looked like an Earthrise, a blue orb hovering over the moon's gray horizon with deep oceans and silver skies. It was our world's first glance at itself, a first chance to see a shared reality and declare
nel specchio.
Our own urgency became clearer as we realized that we hold nothing dearer than this floating body we all call home. We've known that we're caught in the throes of climactic changes some say will just go away, while some simply pray to survive another day. For it is the obscure, the oppressed, the poor who, when the disaster is declared done, still suffer more than anyone. Climate change is the single greatest challenge of our time. Of this, you're certainly aware. It's saddening, but I cannot spare you from knowing an inconvenient fact, because it's getting the facts straight that gets us to act and not to wait. So I tell you this not to scare you, but to prepare you, to dare you to dream a different reality where, despite disparities, we all care to protect this world, this riddled blue marvel, this little true marvel, to master the verve and the nerve to see how we can serve our planet. You don't need to be a politician to make it your mission to conserve, to protect, to preserve that one and only home that is ours. To use your unique power to give next generations the planet they deserve. We are demonstrating, creating, advocating. We heed this inconvenient truth because we need to be anything but lenient with the future of our youth. And while this is a training in sustaining the future of our planet, there is no rehearsal. The time is now, because the reversal of harm and protection of a future so universal should be anything but controversial. So, Earth, pale blue dots, we will fail you not. Just as we chose to go to the moon, we know it's never too soon to choose hope. We choose to do more than cope with climate change. We choose to end it. We refuse to lose. We do this and more, not because it's very easy or nice, but because it is necessary. Because with every dawn we carry the weight of the fates of this celestial body orbiting a star, and as heavy as that weight sounded, it doesn't hold us down, but it keeps us grounded, steady, ready, because an environmental movement of this size is simply another form of an Earthrise. To see it, close your eyes, visualize that all of us in this room and outside of these walls or in these halls, all of us change makers, or in a spacecraft floating like a silver raft in space, and we see the face of a planet anew. We relish the view, we witness its round green and brilliant blue, which inspires us to ask deeply, wholly, what can we do? Open your eyes, know the future of this wise planet is right in sight. Right in all of us, trust this earth uprising, all of us bring light to exciting solutions never tried before, for it is a hope that implores us at our uncompromising core to keep rising up for an earth more than worth fighting for.
Bellissimo questo messaggio di
Beautiful, this message by Amanda. It's extremely powerful and extremely real, actual, especially in these days when youth here in Milan, but not only Milanese youth coming from all over the world, they have launched their message, their alarm, their warning, but also a message of hope. Amanda says she refuses to lose hope, and essentially this is what each and every one of us wants and can do. And during these events, pre-COP events here in Milan, we today have a very important event because we called to be with us various young people that come from networks, organizations, both at national and international level. We have different speakers here in the hall with us, but also connected via Zoom virtually. And in the second part of our event, we will present our Milan Youth Climate Charter, which is essentially the charter that we wrote, that the youth wrote, and it's a document with proposals and what we wanted to say as Climate Reality Italy. We put together this charter together with different activists coming from different networks, and today we will present it publicly here to the people in the room, and it's open to be signed by everyone individually and also by networks and organizations to give our contributions, not just to young people but also in the run-up to the COP26 that will be held in Glasgow at the end of the month. And now I would like to invite on the stage our climate reality leader Domenico Vito, which will be a moderator for us during this first part and this round table of young speakers. And I would like to invite the people here in the hall as well to come up on the stage. Just a technical side note, I will be in the backstage and I will be the moderator here. So please, everybody can come up on the stage, our speakers. The other people will be online, so we will be moderating them online. I will be directing from the backstage. It's fine, Domenico, but then we are waiting for you on the stage as well. Thank you. Okay, so you can take off your mask. We are all respecting the COVID regulations, but at least on the stage, while we are social distancing, we can take off our masks. In the meanwhile, while our speakers are on stage, I will show some pictures of what happened today in the square, in the squares of Italy. Today is an essential day, a very important day, because there was a strike for climate. So today, following a route that went from Via Caroli to the place where the pre-COP is being held, many young people filled the streets with Greta, who sent a very powerful message on not just saying blah, 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 but trying actually to take some decisions that will be really thought through and not just words. And so us, with this charter, with this document, we want to not just say blah, 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 but present some real and true decisions and also very determined decisions. So I leave the floor to Paola to welcome on stage our speakers, and then we'll start with our first session. Thank you. Thank you, Domenico. Absolutely. As I was saying before, we have some of our speakers here on the stage in attendance at the Eco Teatro in Milan, and some other speakers are connected with us through Zoom. First of all, I would like to welcome Alice Kazirakis. She's here with us from the Global Shapers Milano. And then we have with us Roberta Pisani from the Agenzia di Stampa Giovanile. And also, please help me to pronounce it well, Vressau and Jonganda. I would not have been able to say it at the same, with the same exact pronunciation. And then we have two other young speakers, and they too are here to give their thoughts and opinions. They've come to Milan especially to participate at this event. Maybe we can start from Alice. And in the light of these events and of the voice more and more decisive that concerns the proposals that these young people have formulated with the official delegates of the pre-COP, what is your message and what are you expecting as Global Shapers Milano? So thank you for inviting us. We are a group of young people from different parts of Italy, and each hub works on local projects that regard their own city. And in Italy, there are many, many hubs, and we deal generally with three different thematics: climate change, inclusion, education, and employment. And for Milan, for our hub in Milan, I think that the projects linked to climate change are especially important. We worked on projects that allow people from universities to collaborate with us to project cleaner spaces for the city and bring better interactions between the municipality and citizens. And then we worked with the commercial partners of Global Shapers. So the projects evolve from year to year, and the message is the same. And I represent the last part of the last chunk of young people, because I'm already 30 years old. But I think that essentially to get to a climate condition that is acceptable, we really need to have everyone get involved: citizens, the administration, business stakeholders. So we try to be such a kind of like a glue between these realities. So we believe that there is a need for some projects. Thank you, Alice. And I asked to Domenico from the backstage if he can intervene with some questions. Otherwise, I can go on. No, I'll let our speakers go on talking, and then I'll leave the floor to those who are following online. Thank you, Domenico. Good, Alice. Maybe we will go back on your contribution in a while. Roberta, would you like to tell us something about what you are doing as Agenzia di Stampa Giovanile in your group? Maybe also give an insight to your experience.
Yes, it's really a pleasure to be here in Milan. The Agenzia di Stampa is a project to promote a participative journalism with a youthful style, written by young people for young people, and to raise awareness above all for climate change. And a project which was funded by the region. We bring 8 people to the COPs, and therefore what is being said in these negotiations can also be brought outside and can become a topic for discussions for young people. And among the other projects, there was a conference in Trento for young people, and that's why we have Gaia and Sofia here on the stage, who are the speakers for this conference, where we wrote a document for political reasons, and they will talk about this later. So I'll leave the floor to Gaia. Yes, we are two of these young people from Trentino Alto Adige, and our experience was magnificent. It happened after a training course, thanks to the Agenzia di Stampa and other associations from our region. And after this training, we held this conference in person in May, where we wrote this document with recommendations for the institutions. So we talked about different fields, economy, education, and also non-profit. And we wrote some advice, some proposals that came from our voices. Our document was also based on our territory, so we had some meetings with the mayor of Trento and various provinces, and obviously this was our job, but it was a very interesting journey, because we could also come here in Milan for the pre-COP and to talk with the other youth networks and to talk about the other events that are being held here in Milan.
Okay, thank you. Going back to, well, I'm always checking with Domenico, yeah. I would say we can leave the floor to speakers online. We'll leave some introduction time. We'll leave the floor to Melissa Jimenez Gomez Tagle, which is from the Planetary Health, which is from an organization that deals with planetary health. And yeah, we'll leave the floor to Melissa and all the other guys online. So you have the floor, Melissa.
Hello, can you guys hear me well? Perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks to Climate Reality for this great opportunity to speak out, to this great opportunity to make our voices be heard. So the message we want all decision makers to receive is that action needs to be done right now. We need to also pay attention to health, not just from humans, but to the health of the planet. We need to have a holistic vision of this self-care from us and also for the planet. And I always like to make this analogy of looking at the planet as if it was our body. We are humans, so we are part of the cells of this planet, of this great body. And along with other living organisms, we live together, we coexist with them. So we know that if several cells are not healthy or are not in balance, then the homeostatic equilibrium is broken from our bodies. With greed and aims for eternal prosperity without borders, we will damage other living organisms, and this will have a boomerang effect later in the long term for us. Moreover, there is this great phrase that I like from Carl Gustav Jung, which speaks about the shadow of our own unconscious, which guides our lives. And it is that the outside is a reflection of the inner self. So we are seeing all these terrible scenarios with lack of resources, environmental degradation, despair, probably because the universal consciousness is not well. And we must find a way to heal it. And so also based on what the WHO says, we must listen to science And we must pay attention to evidence that has the linkage of climate change with health. We must have more coordination between people, partner agencies, the United Nations, and other scientific communities. And we need to assure proper representation. We need to raise awareness of these threats of climate change that also pose a threat to our own human health. And last but not least, we must support the implementation of the public health response to climate change to help with capacity building and also to reduce these health vulnerabilities that are posed by climate change. So if we realize the consequences of climate change crisis are causing already 250,000 additional deaths per year. This comes from malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, heat stress, and not forgetting to mention that 4.3 million deaths per year are related to household air pollution and others to air pollution. So the real pandemic is caused by climate change. So we ask urgently to all decision makers to stop these words and to start with actions. Thank you.
Grazie, grazie mille Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
Grazie.
And thank you. Before giving the floor to our next speakers, I will briefly talk in English for...
You have to choose the English channel because the session will be translated.
Those who are wishing to hear English need to choose the English channel. Also for those who are in the room, if you want to follow the interpretation from English into Italian, you can connect through the Zoom link that we sent through the email. Now, we'll go to our next speakers. We'll stay in the domain of the health of the planet, and I leave the floor to Giulia Bosi, who's a Youth 7 delegate, and she dealt in this organization to the right, she dealt with the right of health. So you have the floor.
I'm sorry for this voice, but I'm not feeling 100% well, so I'm going to be brief. So thank you very much for this invitation and also for the previous meetings. It was very, very interesting to listen to other people. But most of all, I'm very happy that in this panel, we're not only talking about environment, but also about health, as also Melissa just said. So it was very interesting for me to listen to these different people coming from different areas and dealing with so many different issues. But at the end of the day, as Melissa was saying, a holistic approach is needed. So I'm going to stop here for now. I really, really believe that what this pandemic has shown us is that environment and health are not two things that can be disconnected from each other. And we already knew that, but I think the pandemic made it crystal clear. So I really hope that this kind of new truth is going to be there. And I really hope we're not going to forget it for the future. Thank you.
Grazie mille Giulia.
Thank you, Giulia. And we also want to underline this link between health, human health, and the health of the world. And now I leave the floor to Matteo Bellè. She's a part of the Rete Giovani 2021, which is a network with 150 associations that started from nothing, and they had the idea to present some documents for the Italian government after the budget law. Matteo? Yes.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for your invitation. I'm especially curious to hear a big number of people, also made up by many people from Trento. I am from an organization in the University of Trento, so I joined this project with the Young People Network on the development of the PNR, Piano Nazionale di Resilienza, a plan by the Italian government where we present our ideas by our ideas to the Minister of the Ecological Transition in Italy, and we wanted to also cooperate and to give our contribution to this big concept, this big idea. So I was really impressed by what Julia said before, and that we need a global approach, regarding the fact that we do not have to deal with the planet only, but everything that surrounds it. So we have different domains on which we can work, something not just centralized. Thank you again. I'm very curious to hear many people and what they think.
Thank you, Matteo. And now I'll leave the floor to Leila Reu, Operations Manager and Board Member of Yes Europe, Young Leaders in Energy and Sustainability. I leave the floor to you, Leila.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here today and to participate to this event. So yeah, today I'm joining on behalf of Yes Europe. Yes Europe stands for Young Leaders in Energy and Sustainability, and it's a non-profit organization of students as well as young professionals who are active at the European level, as well as locally in more than 17 countries, including Italy. Yes Europe is really a member-driven organization, so we stay flexible enough for individuals, young people, to develop projects and initiatives that fit their current needs in order to be leaders and actors within the energy transition. So the main trend that arises from these initiatives, it's about learning, collaborating, and acting. And that's the point that I want to bring quickly on the table today. First, there is a really important point for me and for us as an organization is the fact that educational structures need to be adapted toward the complexity of addressing issues related to climate change. There is a need for serious and collaborative dialogues and exchanges to be fostered between all fields, all generations, and all sectors. And that's all about making it global and really like fostering this exchange between individuals to have a big impact. If we look at the case of the energy transition, as a lot of different sectors that need to transition towards sustainability, it's based on so many fundamental elements of our society: transport, housing, individual habits. And acting towards sustainability and the energy transition really requires meaningful exchanges between citizens, youth, but also policymakers, industry players, academic institutions, including all opinions and needs in order to move in the right direction. And finally, there is also one point that I wanted to mention today. It's the role of youth within our organization, Yes Europe, but also so many others involved in sustainability and fighting climate change. I have a lot of great examples here. Inviting young people to events and listening to them, it's really great, but it's also a shame that we have to formulate it this way. Sometimes it looks like we are just here to kind of like give a point of view, or that we need to build our own space to express ideas and engage. And for us, that's absolutely not right. Young people, during their studies, professional engagement, during their free time in NGOs, they're already engaging to just learn, build some projects, collaborate to find ways to have an impact and work towards sustainability. Therefore, there is a strong need for policymakers to follow this example, engage in serious discussions with organizations representing the youth, and construct a meaningful collaboration to foster this action. It's not about including youth in the fight toward climate change, because we are already here taking action. It's all about developing the right tools, policies, and structures to scale this impact. That's the actions and expectations and engagement that we want to see during COP26 and any major events happening in the next years to basically fight climate change. Thank you so much for listening.
Grazie mille, Leila.
Thank you so much, Leila. It's also essential and very important, this remark that you made on the role of policymakers, because you know, we can't just expect young people to go on, and this is also what we will talk about on our round table of discussion. Then I leave the floor to Martina Alesse from El COI Italy. El COI, it's a process that is inside the procedures of young people's engagement. So Martina will tell us more about it. It's a group of people, of young people at national level that talk about climate change. So Martina, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening to everybody. Yes, today I represent here as on behalf of ELCOE Italy. Our team is made up of young activists and professionals who want to take care of the climate and want to make their voices heard. And they also want to express their ideas. ELCOE, as it was said, it means Local Conference of Youth on Climate Change, and it's the local version of the COE. So our idea is to have an impact on specific events. It's an event organized by young people, and it's for the people of all Italy. And we want to create a moment where people have the possibility to come together and to bring forward concrete proposals for climate change in moments for capacity building. And then our job is to bring forward proposals which are very concrete and they have a local focus. And then we want to bring them to the institutions, national institutions, but also to international institutions. Youngo is the conference for young people. And this year, the conference was held in September, and the topic was analyzed through four focus, from food, economic, social, and cultural level. And the participants, after some seminars which were held by some experts, started working, and they focused some studies. They analyzed the process, and then they also found the various steps to bring forward these proposals. And maybe if we have time, we can also present them to you. COE is a very important event for young people to be heard. And we also want to show that we have concrete ideas. And for now, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Martina. Now I would like to ask you all two questions, starting from the first one. As you all know, now in Milan, there was Youth for Climate, the event that involved young people from all over the world to elaborate some proposals that they would present at the pre-COP, the negotiations that are now being held. So, because of COVID regulations, but also because of a process of representation of Youth for Climate, just some young people were able to participate in this process. But I ask you, if you were the delegates coming from your countries at the Youth for Climate event, what are the three things that you would have asked above everything else to the policymakers and those at the pre-COP negotiations? So starting from the same order with which we introduced ourselves, I asked to our speakers in the room. Sorry, Domenico, I think there's also Patrick that has to have the floor. Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Small mistake that I made. Patrick Raiambello, you have the floor now.
Time is running out. The time to take climate action was decades ago when the climate crisis was first identified and mainstreamed. But it's not too late. Look at all of us convened physically and virtually here to show how much we care about the global crisis and how ready we are to take action upon it. And the question now is, are those in power ready to match the energy, determination, and will of its stakeholders? Some of the arguments hurled against climate activists is that we do not know what we are talking about and that we don't have concrete solutions. That is not the case, as what the climate movement has created, a Milan youth chapter, joint statement from global mayors and young climate leaders, and the various youth statements in ELCOIS. Ahead of COP26, we, the C40 Global Youth and Mayors Forum, call on national governments to take radical action within the next year to address the climate crisis in line with at least having global emissions by 2030. The science is clear. We must collectively at least have global emissions by year 2030, and global north countries must go further and faster to reduce their fair share of emissions. If we allow greed for more money, power, and oil to prevent us reaching this goal, we will not have a future. Right now, the real test of any government's commitment to climate action is where it is directing COVID-19 recovery funding. 100% instead of the current 10% of stimulus funds should contribute to a sustainable, equitable recovery from the pandemic. First, we call on the national governments to put the principles of a global Green New Deal declaration of climate emergency, keep global heating below 1.5 degrees Celsius by curbing emissions in transport, buildings, and waste, put inclusive climate action at the center of urban planning and decision making, and foster collaboration between private sector, civil society, frontline communities, and government institutions. These are essentially to put people before profits or partisan politics and deliver a green and just transition. Next, to divest from the fossil fuel industry and invest in climate solutions. By funding unsustainable corporations, we prolong their existence and encourage their activities. And these disproportionately impact marginalized communities rather than the rich, as well as the global South countries rather than global North countries, which is why we also ask for $100 billion financing to global South countries to promote equity and justice. And in order for the systemic changes we aim to achieve, we need platforms for collaborations. Lend their ears to their constituents. They feel the climate crisis firsthand and know what their community needs. Give them platforms to amplify their voice and to partake in decision making. This is what city and municipal mayors are doing, and this willingness to work and collaborate together with youth, not just to give genuine representation to stakeholders. This should be institutionalized and reciprocated. There should be no space of false promises, of misrepresentation, and tokenism of people and of youth. It is time for incremental change. We are calling for a power shift. We need a radical structural transition to a new way of life and a just, sustainable future. This is a global emergency, and we have no time left to waste. These calls are also reciprocated by Filipino youth in the Philippines. I have not been involved personally in the process, and this is just a summary from the out. Filipino youth from the three main islands of Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao identified pressing social and environmental issues in their own regions and integrated this into the National Youth Statement. Recently, they circulated the statement and asked for government officials in the legislation and executive branch, as well as NGO partners, to share their insights on how to make the calls for action feasible. Filipino youth acknowledge that good governance is critical to ensure that laws, policies, plans, and programs that are geared on climate change and action are actualized and strongly implemented. Hence, the local and national governments must uphold constitutional rights, develop climate action plans, strengthen existing laws, pass and implement environmental laws, and veto legislation that will contribute to environmental degradation. Next, they acknowledge that holding corporations accountable for their contributions to the climate crisis is a vital step towards achieving climate justice, especially for companies engaged in extractive industries and environmentally harmful activities. Also, empowering our environmental defenders, vulnerable groups, and marginalized sectors is vital in destabilizing social inequalities and ensuring that our environmental goals are continuously being pushed through. Healthy ecosystems serve as carbon sinks, buffers against climate crisis impacts, and providers of natural resources. Yet they are endangered due to destructive human activities. Food and water security is also threatened by the climate crisis, while our food systems further contribute to the problem. And lastly, education plays a critical role in raising awareness about the urgency to address climate issues and promote positive behavioral change towards the environment. The Filipino youth believe in the power to ignite positive change for the future. As long as people in power are willing to listen to those who they are serving, their constituencies, us youth, we can have the change that we need. We can provide the needs of communities. We can and we will have a green, inclusive future for not just our generation, but future generations to come. We are the youth. We are the leaders of today and the hope of the future. Padayon, Kapataang Pandaigdig, March on Global Youth. Maraming salamat. Mabuhay ang ating kilusan.
Grazie mille, Patrick Ryan Bello.
Thank you, Patrick Ryan Bello, youth member from the Youth Forum from the Philippines, is also a youth leader. So thank you for giving us this motto, which comes probably from the Philippines. So I'll repeat the question for everybody. If you were the delegates at the Youth for Climate event, what are the three things that you would have asked above everything else to the policymakers and the negotiators, starting from Roberta and Alice? Okay, so Alice, you have the floor.
Well, I don't know if there are three things, but I think it's a more unified speech. I think that there is money in this world, but they are dedicated to the wrong places. They are investments that have followed a path from the Second World War up until now, but now we need something else. At that time, we needed to produce, and now we have to limit the production. We have to change our decisions, and the goal is not to gain a profit for money, but for nature, for cities, and for the people. So we have to align our interests. And I think that what lacks is creativity and the courage to take some decisions. We think that we have to program projects in a different way, because we need to make more courageous decisions from programs. And we have to also to involve young people that grew up in a world that is different from the one in the past. And I think that these topics were also important in the 70s. So this is a 50-year-old plan, and maybe with the youth of today is more understood, because we have a more international and interconnected population. And the open source is really a value, because we can be connected and we can also interact with the work of other people. And we are here with many other associations to bring forward these proposals. And I really think that we have to believe in the point of view of young people, and not in that of those that grew up 50 years ago. And maybe it's time to act, and I think there won't be another
Alice,
moment.
Thank you. And I was very impressed by the fact that you quoted what are the intangible assets. I mean, I am really on the ball. I've been on it since 30 years, and now more and more the message is coming through. So yes to profit, but the profit needs to be fair, just, even for the things that are non-material, because that's what's more important. And then I was very, very impressed by what you said, and I'm starting to think that you young people have a collective intelligence that is also a collaborative intelligence, which is absolutely unique. And maybe this was what was missing from the previous generations. You truly understand what the points of contact are between what are opportunities and what are problems, and this supports you extremely well in your path towards solutions, to finding solutions. You're also very well equipped to put yourself into the game, and this stimulates your creativity. And I think this is it's extremely beautiful, and I think it's a very big asset of yours. And I think that those that are not so young anymore, which is the way I talk, people from my generation and onwards, really understand what this means and understand that it's necessary and also essential for the well-being of everybody to give you the floor. So Roberta, you have the floor now.
I think it's really impossible to not to see it. As we said before, I completely agree with you, and I would also add the fact that we need a change at a political level. We need politics that thinks about people and not profit. And this is what is actually happening because of the capitalistic system in which we live. And we also need a politics that think about the change that we need to fight against climate change, because in the next few years we will need a truly different change in our way of life so as to limit the increase of the temperature by 1.5 degrees. And we need politicians that support us and not the interests of businesses that keep on looking at profit and all the activities of greenwashing that are happening because of this. Although there is a real interest for the climate. So we need politicians that care about the environment and for the people. Because if we do not think about a decrease, a happy decrease now, there will be a very tragic decrease in the future.
Thank you, Roberta. I don't know if you want to add something, otherwise I'll give the floor to the backstage. Okay, Domenico, you have the floor. Okay, so now we will ask our friends that are connected online, and we will start from Patrick, who spoke before. Patrick, you have the floor. And answer this question. If you were a delegate of the Youth for Climate, what would you have asked?
If I were a delegate, I would have asked why global North leaders are not doing as much as they can to help provide equity to global South countries, especially since we already acknowledge and they also acknowledge that they have greater contribution to the climate crisis. So why are they not acting fast? Why are they not acting as urgently? Why are they not acting adequately? Why are funds still inaccessible for global South countries? Also, for the second, why is it that we are already how many months into the COVID-19 pandemic, and yet there is no clear protocols to help ensure the safety, the health and well-being of the delegates, especially from global South countries who are experiencing inequity in vaccination. This may actually serve as a hindrance, and this could have been avoided if only they have thought of it sooner. So why is it just recently that they have announced more stringent protocols and announced accommodations to help people from the global South countries? And third, why are we allowing that any protests happening on grounds during the COP26? Why are the organizers allowing this to be dismantled? That was done last year, COP25, and even in the pre-COP for the youth earlier on. So why is it that global leaders who espouse the importance of having youth in the discussions, of having youth in the decision-making table, why is it then that they are also the ones who try to silence them, who try to say, this is not supposed to happen, you are not supposed to protest? Why then? So these are the three questions I wish to ask.
Grazie, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. And now we'll ask Melissa. What would you ask if you were a youth delegate at the Youth for Climate?
Thank you so much. I think I would ask why you didn't act on time. Why were you seeing that the problem was coming and you decided to wait until it was too late or until we are feeling that it is too late? Second, have you ever thought about your children? Have you ever thought about the future generations? Did you ever thought about the future generations when you were looking at your profit? That's the second question. And the third question would be, how can we all together assure a green and healthy recovery for the planet, not just for the rich countries, but for the entire world? How are you going to assure inclusion from all vulnerable communities, especially the ones that are going to be hit harder by climate change? How are you going to guarantee each of them that they will be in a safe environment, that they will have a healthy environment where they can be humans? And yeah, those are tons of questions, but one goes to the other, and I can keep going, but if I was a joint delegate, I would do that. Thank you.
Grazie Melissa. E ora la parola a Giulia.
Okay, now Julia, you have the floor.
So 2 quick points. I would say the first one, youth involvement, because this morning I was listening to some podcasts and reading some newspaper, and apparently it seems that listening to youth is becoming fashionable among politicians. And youth council are spreading. So, for example, the G7 has the G7 youth, the forum where I was delegate, but the Council of Europe has one too. The WHO has established one too. So it's becoming fashionable. Maybe, I don't know if this is the truth or not, but what I think is that we should try to make the most of this opportunity. Maybe for politicians it's fashionable, but the truth is that we are there. So I think that it's a good starting point. So I would advocate for youth involvement and creating kind of stable forum where young people can talk. Second point, as Melissa was anticipating, is an intergenerational approach, which is something easy to say. How to translate it in practice is a little bit more complex. But there is this example that I really like, and it's the fact that, for example, in Wales, there is a commissioner for future generation. And this commissioner, who is a woman, Sophie O, has this role to be the guardian of future generation. And how does she do that? Essentially, she reviews, and her team review, the impact that of the policies of public bodies in Wales. So they check the long-term impact of public policies. And I think this is very interesting. And especially when we talk about the impact of policies on the environment, this could be really the future. So it's not impossible to think about how to translate this intergenerational approach. Wales has found a way to translate it into practice. And I think there could be other ways to be creative on this. So this was my second point. Youth involvement and intergenerational approach. Thank you.
Grazie Giulia. Adesso la parola a Matteo.
Okay, Matteo, you have the floor. Now, look.
Well, there's a beautiful term which was said by one of the people in the room, creativity. We have to support a creative area, above all when we talk about the environment and politics that also can change how humans live. So the development of a creative environment. Humans are creative when they are in a creative environment. I think that young people truly have creativity, and it's also very evident. Well, then humans can also respect what is all around us and the environment, which is at the basis of all the decisions that are being taken at high levels. My job I study finance and economics, so I heard different opinions on the fact that businesses think about profit, and they think about profit even more right now. And I think there should be a balance. They have to create a circular economy management so we can value money, which is the tool that makes markets work, but also the human aspect, which is the main key, because everything depends from humans. So the profit depends from human beings, and and the profit of businesses. So I think that we need to raise awareness, we need creativity, and we need a right balance.
Thank you, Matteo. Now I ask Leila. You have the floor now.
Thank you. It's a lot of really great points who got raised today. So I'm just going to highlight a few because it's just like a lot of interesting ideas and also some that I had in mind. Yeah, I really liked, Melissa, what you said about like how do we ensure, how do we guarantee a sustainable future? And for me, that would be like kind of the first point. It's not about like defining some global trends or some global cap that all the countries have to follow. They did that already and they didn't respected it. So maybe it's just better to make it more tangible, more concrete. And we have some tools already in place. We have like some public policies that are successful. We have the science behind us who allow us to understand better all the different dynamics related to climate change. And at some point, we just need to use that and transfer it into tangible and concrete actions. And that also needs international and global cooperation, because it's good to have a global politic with everyone behind that, but it's also important to actually implement the tools with this international cooperation, because that's the only way it's just going to happen. So that's the one thing that I wanted to mention. Also, I've heard about education. Of course, it's really important. We are also shaping the future. The people studying at the moment at university, they're going to be the one bringing new ideas, fostering creativity. And for that, we also need an educational infrastructure that is well done, that is changing, and it just fits to the challenges brought by climate change. And that's the only way also young people and anyone is going to get the right tools and the right framework to develop new ideas and move towards sustainability. And of course, investment flows, that's a really big challenge. That's a really big topic. And governments and public institutions, they do have a role to play here. So I have in mind like the example of hydrogen. So it's like one of the resource that is mentioned a lot in order to shape a sustainable energy landscape. But of course, to have like a fuel cell electric car, so car functioning with hydrogen, you need the company who is building the car to invest in that. And then you need to have charging station, which is maybe another company taking care of that. And for all of these actors to coordinate, so that would be private as well as public actors, it's really important for governments, as well as the European Union and also international actors, to just take action on that and foster this kind of development, to just make sure that it's going to be sustainable and that it's actually possible also for private actors to engage in a way that would be safe enough for them. So that would be the main point for me. Thank you.
Grazie Leila.
Thank you, Leila. Now, Melissa, you have the floor. Sorry, Martina, you have the floor now.
Well, as it was already said by some colleagues, I agree with the topic of finance and the right to put these resources towards a just goal, but most importantly to create a development model and to change the one that we have now, which has caused climate change and all these problems. So I would ask decision makers and policymakers to recognize the role, the critical role that nature has for our survival, and also to recognize that we can no longer put nature under pressures for economic development. and stop promoting extracting coal and fossil fuels, and start thinking about the needs of human beings.
Thank you, Martina. Now, a very brief question to which I ask you a very brief answer. We are here as Climate Reality and as very different and many organizations, and we try to involve as much as possible youth movements and youth in general. But as far as you're concerned, how do you think we can improve the involvement of young people in these events, in the decision-making process? What are the points that you think are useful for a good engagement of young people, starting from our speakers in the room? Another great question, Domenico.
This is a very
Truly,
difficult one.
Alice?
I think that young people are already involved, but I don't want to say obvious things. I see that very often, mostly in design, in order to involve people, you need to have the majority of ideas. But the most important thing is that to give young people empowerment. If they feel like there is some interest, then they will be involved. And not only to have ideas, but without
Freely,
a
I'd say.
concrete goal. So if we really evaluate the ideas of young people, we can also involve them in a more serious and more concrete way. Because I think that at a generational level, I think that we are already involved as young people.
Thank you, Alice. Roberta, now you have the floor.
I would like to add a thing. I think that we should want to do something because we are here as young people, but there are also young people that are not interested in these topics, and our goal is to raise awareness among other young people. And so make these kinds of events, hold these kinds of events for these problems, but it's very difficult when we need to face a different kind of mentality. Maybe they have the same age, but they have a different education, and therefore they are not so open. So I'm really grateful to see that there are many of us, but I think there's a little bit of maybe people think that maybe we could be many more in the
But
future.
I'm sure that you will be a lot of people from now on. Domenico, now you have the floor, and then we'll end our first part now. Patrick, you have the floor now for your answer.
My apologies, my internet was cut off earlier. May I ask for a repeat of the question?
Surely, yes. How can you improve the involvement of young people in the movements and in the decision-making process? That was the question.
Okay, thank you. So actually, one of the things that will greatly improve our contribution, not only in our own community, but also to our locality in governance, is actually to reach out to politicians, to reach out to people who are in power, not necessarily government officials. We can also reach out to NGOs, to church leaders, to civil society, to private sectors who have their plans, who have their project programs that will affect us, that will affect other stakeholders, and ask, and actually not ask, claim our space in decision making. We deserve to have our voices heard. We should not just be an afterthought. We should not just be invited to speak. No, we must always be present. We must show our force. We must show that we have the solutions at hand, and we should claim the spaces. So we reach out to them. If they do not listen, we keep on reaching out to them. We do not stop because the climate crisis will not stop. So we march on forward. Padayon sa atin.
Grazie, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick. Now, Melissa, you have the floor.
Thank you once again. Thinking about what Patrick said, that the climate crisis is not over, it's not over because there's not inclusion of all of us. Once everybody is involved and included in these decisions, then there's going to be hope and there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel with this climate crisis. So with inclusion, I would also say, for example, this kind of spaces should be also reached by vulnerable communities who do not have access to internet and who are the ones that are suffering the climate crisis the most. So we need to find mechanisms and ways for technology to be reachable for them so they can speak up, so they can be listened. For example, with indigenous communities that live in the, for example, in the Amazon forest, or for example, I come from Mexico, indigenous communities that live in the green areas that are unfortunately attacked by fracking companies and other, let's say, interests from the higher levels of the chain of economy. They need to be heard because they are the ones who are keeping Mother Nature alive and know how to coexist with it better than us. So we need to listen to them first, and therefore we need to give them a voice, and we need to ease the way for them to be listened to. So inclusion, not just from the rich countries, but from every part, especially the ones who are vulnerable the most for this climate crisis. Thank you.
Grazie, grazie Melissa. Giulia?
Thank you, Melissa. Now, Julia, you have the floor.
Very quickly, because I know time is flying. I think that one of the problems is that the employees in public institutions may lack the will or the knowledge to how to effectively engage young people in the processes. So one of the solutions could be to provide trainings to decision makers on how to effectively involve the youth. Thank you.
Grazie Giulia. Matteo?
Thank you, Julia. Now, Matteo.
Yes, I'll be very quick. I also think that what Julia said, the education and the training of people inside businesses is very important. We are seeing many changes, especially in 2021, in businesses. And I think that this is a good start, but and for the inclusion of young people in projects and associations. So I think that we are going on a good path, but I think that we have to work more, and there is also hope.
Thank you, Matteo. Leila, now you have the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also going to be quite brief. We're running a bit out of time. But yeah, the one thing, a lot of great ideas again mentioned. I really like the idea also that education goes for everyone, for the young generation, but also for the current policymakers and people taking, having the power to take actions, let's say. But maybe one way is just like also have the feeling that at least a part of the youth is speaking at the moment, and it's really like having visibility and also just taking the space that we need to express ideas. However, maybe the way to engage with more young people would just be to show that the young people who are already talking actually have an impact and have a space where they are listened to and there is action taken based on their ideas and their needs. Because if there is like this really visibility on the impact that we can have by expressing thoughts, then maybe more young people are going to engage. But at the moment, there is just a lack of, okay, we have some platforms to talk, but I think a lot of us are not really seeing the results and the fact that we are really listened to and taken into account. So that would be my main feedback on that.
Grazie Leila.
Thank you, Leila. And now, lastly, Martina, you have the floor.
Well, I think that the point is not to be only heard.
non è solamente il voler essere ascoltati, ma anche l'essere aperti
also to be open to dialogue. And I think that we are open to dialogue. We are ready to be part of this 100%. And concerning the many initiatives, well, there are many of us, and maybe for us as activists and young people, we want to reach the highest level of coordination as possible, so as to put pressure and to have an enormous impact. So thank you.
Thank you, Martina, and thank you all the people that participated to this panel. Thank you, everyone. Giulia, Matteo, Leila, Martina, everyone, really. And now I'd like to go to our next panel. We have just the time to switch our speakers, and I thank Alicia, Roberta, and Ilaria and Sofia, who need to take a train to go back to their home in Trento. Thank you so much. Please join the other people in the room. Now, from the backstage, we will be getting ready for our next part, where we will present our charter, the Milan Youth Charter. Domenico now is surely searching for it, and in a very brief time we will discover together this document that we prepared in very little time. From the idea that came to mind not even 2 years ago to support young activists, we were able in a very short time to organize a literathon, some kind of agathon, a literary agathon. Do not ask me anything else because I'm not very knowledgeable on the topic, but last September we worked with many young people from different networks in Milan, different associations and movements. We worked on 5 different topics and domains which are strictly related to the 4 domain areas on which until yesterday 400 young delegates from various countries from all over the world had their saying. So today we are here to present our charter, and we have connected with us online again many speakers at national and international level, and essentially we want to give metaphorically this charter from one hand to the youth, because this is a document that could be an incentive, an inspiration, and that could be also implemented with some solutions, some questions in these 5 domains. But today we would also like to give metaphorically this charter to the decision makers, so the so-called political decision makers, but also very high-level personalities from the civil society and at local, national and international level. So Domenico, in the meantime, you can tell me if our speakers are ready as well in our Zoom call, our Zoom meeting. Yes, in our Zoom call we have our first speakers. We also have one speaker that came here, and I invite on the floor Adriana Valenzuela. Adriana, if you'd like to go on the stage. Now we are starting with the second panel. Thank you, Adriana. This is a very special occasion because Adriana participated. I'm very pleased to meet you. Thanks a lot for being here. She participated in the works of the Youth COP, and she is absolutely knowledgeable on the topic because she worked on it. Thank you, Adriana.
We have the first speaker online, and I want to say a few words on the charter. With this charter, we wanted to involve a series of information and associations and youth movements. The first one was the webinars that we held starting from February up until in September in order to prepare for the pre-COP, and then an event which was a hackathon, literally hackathon, in order to write the proposals of this charter that you will see. You can see it on the screen, that we want to share with the policymakers and the stakeholders. Then I'll stop sharing the screen and I'll leave the floor to Emanuela Vita.
Good evening, everyone. Please excuse me, I hope you can hear me. Paola, do you hear us?
Yes, we hear you.
Yes, and thank you for being here with us. Thank you. Thank you. I'm not physically there with you, but I'm from Base, Milan.
We know that this weekend there are many events, and for the Food Wave project, which is funded by the European Union and that you represent for the city of Milan.
Yes, Paola, I'd like to thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for your work, the work we've done together, and from our side, there is some satisfaction. As you were saying, Food Wave is coordinated by the municipality of Milan, but it's an international project that is present in 17 cities and 23 NGOs. So it's truly a really important project that lasts for 4 years, and it's co-financed by the European Union, and it wants to bring together the civil society, policymakers, and the youth. So to allow the Food Wave network to enter into this dialogue in the process of making this charter, it was a very special occasion to triplicate the work that we've been doing. So we are very curious about it, and we're very interested in it. The charter that today you will present, of course, and we hope that it's the start, just the start of a dialogue, and that it will continue during the next years on different levels. So thank you so much. We are here, and we will follow you from Base Milan. There will be 3 days of events, and you will be here with us on Sunday. So we will represent the work we've done in this occasion, in this place, Base Milano, and it will be an opportunity to get the message through even more.
Thank you so much, Manuela. Good work. And we'll see you on Sunday. Now we have Luigi Di Marco. Hi, Luigi. Welcome. On behalf of ASVIS, but Luigi is also a climate reality leader, Team Italy.
Luigi, ci senti?
Luigi, can you hear us?
Forse c'è qualche problema di audio.
Maybe there's some problems.
Perché sappiamo che il nostro Luigi oggi è
We know that Luigi is in Rome because he had to be at a ASVIS event, and he's here with us virtually. And I would also say that Luigi was one of the speakers of our event in Milan on the 18th of September, and he also contributed to the so-called commitments or the proposals on The Future Is Now. Let's try again to see if you can listen to him. Maybe we can skip to the other speaker, then we'll reconnect. I'll give the floor to Daniele Mastroianni.
Sì, sì, vi sento, arrivo.
Yes, yes, I can hear you. I'm here. Welcome, welcome. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? Now, I would like to speak in English maybe to address more directly our young people that I heard before, because they made me, relive a frequent schizophrenia that I live, but I will talk in Italian because we're in Italy. I think at some point I can define myself as an activist because I collaborate with the Climate Reality Project for some time now.
Romano, can I ask you
Can I ask you a question, maybe? So
Since
we have Adriana here with us
today,
could you please
can
talk
you
in English?
speak English so that
even
Adriana can understand you?
Can
we also
hear,
have
we
other
have different
representatives of the Climate Reality Project.
They're not
Italian.
English native speakers.
Speak English because I wanted to talk more directly to all the young people that I heard before. And I was telling, this event is making me live again some sort of schizophrenia that I'm facing quite frequently. On one hand, I think I can consider myself an activist, also working with the Climate Reality Project. On the other hand, I belong to the so-called policymakers. I am a former national negotiator at the COP. Now I'm co-heading an international organization. And, you know, it all looked like there was a request from the powerless to the powerful. So I would like to tackle three things that have been said that to me do not make sense in this dynamic. The first thing is exactly this. We are asking to the decision makers. The second thing was actually said in the introductory video, not because it is nice, but because it is necessary. And the third thing that was frequently touched upon is not in the name of profit, but also this kind of things. Now, even in our community, there are some commonplaces that need to be clarified. First, let us ask to the powerful. The COP is the moment when the powerful go together and they have all the means to decide also on our behalf. Well, let me tell you why I've been becoming increasingly an activist. It's exactly because I work with the governments. You know, it's a big problem, so we expect the solution from, let's say, big people. Now we are trying to get to a solution based on the Paris Agreement, which is a so-and-so agreement. But even if it was the best agreement in human history, what would it be? It's just a piece of paper. And the ecosystem does not react to a piece of paper. It becomes relevant when it gives a series of measures for whom to change, for us, individuals. It is the sum of different behaviors by us, the individuals, that will make the difference. So while we gather in Milan, while we protest in the streets, we should be aware of the fact that beyond asking to the institutions, there is something that is much more powerful to be done. That is, start with ourselves. Not only in terms of an individual commitment that could make the difference because there are butterfly effects and because the ecosystem amplifies the impact of what we do. But also because actually, you know, we see those people like the multinationals or the presidents as the one who are powerful, but we have the power in our hands. Let's imagine that we start buying things in a different way. You will see that economy changes at once. I'll give you an example. Probably if you go to supermarkets, you are familiar with those plastic cards that look like credit cards that are fidelity cards. And you subscribe to them and you have the impression that their purpose is to attract you as a customer because there are some discounts linked with membership. But that's not the purpose. They give you those cards to track your preferences. And the tracking is so, you know, precise that even if 10 people change their demand, change their buying preferences, the supermarket will follow immediately, providing what you want. So it is true, fair enough. We have to ask to the COP people, we have to ask to the president, whatever you want. Those are micro policies, but we are the ones who shape micro policies. If our personal decisions change, the market will follow. Politics will follow, not only through vote, also because politics observes what people want. Then second thing, not because it's nice, but because it is necessary. Well, yeah, fair enough, it's necessary, but it is also nice. It is proven that any more sustainable behavior that we choose, although it's instinctively perceived in terms of a cost for our quality of life, actually delivers a much higher quality of life. If we eat the way that protects our health, well, we also protect the environment. If we move the way that protects our socialization, our health, well, we also protect the environment. This is a rule, and it works in every possible sector. What's good for you, what's really good for you, it's good for your planet. And what's good for your planet is also good for you. So first thing, we can make the difference through what we buy, the way we behave. Sometimes we are tempted not to engage personally because we have the perception that this might be a sacrifice, but science tells us, no, this is no sacrifice. Actually, whatever you do to be more sustainable will translate in more money in your pockets and in a better quality of life. And then this thing, you know, we have to go towards a happy degrowth and not for profit, but for something else. Well, this is understandable. During thousands of years, we've been distinguishing sectors and also distinguishing profit and social values as though they were enemies. Actually, this was deep inside company behaviors. Companies felt that if they had to integrate concerns for the environment or for society, they would be losing their competitivity. So they tried to revert some costs on their territories or on their communities. But then something happened recently. The economic world discovered that sustainable is convenient, not only because it saves the world, but because actually it increases the production of income. It makes companies more performant. And you might think that I am a policy something, an activist, so I'm biased. Well, ask those who are beyond any suspect. Ask finance. Finance is shifting their portfolios very quickly from brown economy towards green economy, not only because also finance people have children and they want to save the world, but also because green economy is more profitable. We have been all hearing about a happy degrowth. Well, we can have a happier and more accelerated growth, strange as it seems, through sustainability. Modern economic science links to a transition, the only chance we have to get into a new wave of growth. I don't have time to elaborate on that, but believe me, this is the way it is. So let me get to the very last point I've heard. When you asked how to engage young people, we talked about, you know, building mechanisms to talk, talking more with the institutions, this kind of things. Well, again, people have the power, and young people have much more power than what they think. You know, those markets that really destroy the environment are 60% governed by young people. I mean, it concerns about all the so-called rich world, but not only. Those markets in which there is a hyper abundance of useless things are markets that are normally devised to reach young people. Well, you have a power. make a cultural difference. Stop giving prestige to those who rely on what they have instead of relying on what they are. Launch a new fashion, and you don't need sustainable fashion makers. You can do it yourself. Go around with a t-shirt that says, "This is secondhand." Go around with a phone that says, "This is secondhand." If you do that, you will be doing much more than any policymaker like me, when I am a policymaker, can do at any COP in history. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Romenos, for your inspiring words as always.
Grazie, grazie.
Now I would like to ask you, Adriana, what's your perspective? I don't know if you may share, from the decision makers on the side, and obviously the youth on the other side. So, in your perspective, how much the decision makers really understood the request of the youth delegates in these last days? How much they are able to put themselves, let's say, into action?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be with you here in Milan, especially in the framework of this huge event organized by the Italian government. Italy is the host of the pre-COP 26, but also for first time in the context of the climate change process, the United Nations process, the first time that there is an event only dedicated to youth. And I think that it is a very important point to stress, because it's, as you said, the recognition about the role that young people can play, and also trying to open spaces where young people can discuss with the ministers. And I think that this willingness to open this space is already a step forward. Let me share with you a bit of my experience. I started working with education and sustainable development many years ago in Colombia with an environmental NGO and also as a young leader. And I participated in international conferences, also bringing the voices of young people and presenting our requests to the ministers and decision makers. But also after that, I have the possibility to be a negotiator. I was one of the negotiators of the G77 and China, that is the biggest negotiation group in the context of the multilateral process. And also I was co-sharing the negotiations on education, training, and public awareness. Then one of the complexities is that we are only in one planet, but we have multiple realities. Then there are different perspectives, different realities, different needs, different levels of development. And to manage to have this understanding between countries, I think is completely needed, this multilateral process that bring everyone together, and you can exchange realities. Even during the Youth for Climate event, one of the ministers from the Caribbean expressed how complex it is, because as part of the negotiations, there are different needs, for instance, that the small island developing states are requesting to develop countries, but it's complex because there are different realities. Regarding what happened with the Youth for Climate event, young people work during the year, but also here in Milan to define proposals and recommendations. And let me share a couple of them. One of them is to make education universal, climate education universal and accessible to everyone. And I think that it is a starting point. We need to, that everyone in the world will be aware about what is happening, but not only what is happening, but how they can contribute to be part of the solution. And education needs to be action-oriented and also contextual according to the local realities and according to the cultural context. The second point is that is needed funding. There is a huge gap, and countries now, ministers are discussing the point about funding for climate change. but also funding for climate change education is needed because many countries, for instance, don't have access to international funding to develop national strategies regarding education, training, and public awareness to implement training programs and other. Then funding is also another request that you suggested to the ministers, raising awareness through social media, but also the role of media, bringing information to people. Public participation was highlighted, making youth part of the decision-making process. And one of the responses of the ministers, he said, climate change policy is fundamental, and this policy is also designed at the national level. And it was an invitation that youth engage at the national level with their governments to discuss these points, how they can participate in the national determinate contributions that are action plans in each country. Then I think that we have an international framework, the Paris Agreement, the Sustainable Development Goals, but also there are mechanisms at national level where youth can engage. And finally, I think that every person can be part of the solution and every person can play a role, first of all, as a consumer. What we buy, what we eat, the decisions about how we commute really matter. And we can also shape these decisions through what we decide to eat or not. The second point is also as a citizens, we are the ones that define who are our leaders and who represent us in the government. And voting also is an important role and the accountability to these leaders, but also as educators and communicators. Now young people are connected. The privilege to have internet was not necessarily the reality 2 decades ago, but now through WhatsApp, throughout social media, everyone is interconnected. And I think that young people can build this bridge between generations and become educators and communicators. And the event, the Youth for Climate, will bring these recommendations to COP26. And I think beyond COP26, the most important is how we can implement this at the national and the local level. And projects like the Climate Reality is an exceptional program to raise awareness, but also to develop skills and knowledge to empower everyone to be part of the solution. Then congratulations for presenting the chapter today. I think that is really an extraordinary work, an invitation to continue working. I agree, and especially as I am coming from Colombia, that a country that for many decades has been in a social conflict, that dialogue is fundamental, and we are all in one planet with different realities and different needs, but the only option is to have these understandings, to establish partnership, and to work together to find common solutions, and encourage young people that are here, but the ones that are also listening, to continue working, because this generation is the generation that can really generate a transformation.
Adriana, thank you so much for your...
Adriana, grazie mille per le sue parole molto emozionanti. Lei sta da entrambe le parti della barricata, quindi i giovani e i negoziatori, e grazie per aver condiviso la sua fantastica esperienza. Per essere completamente trasparente con lei e con tutti, ho veramente la sensazione che la COP dei giovani sia stato un momento fantastico, che cambierà il presente e il futuro a un livello diverso, a livello regionale, nazionale, internazionale e intergenerazionale. E ho molte speranze, sono fiduciosa che lei, in quanto negoziatrice, e tutti
will continue to raise their voice, to have an impact in different ways. Yeah, I'm absolutely positive. And thank you so much for your great work and the experience. Domenico, I give back the floor to you for
Yes.
the other speakers.
I will invite Luigi Di Marco to join the table. Luigi.
Luigi,
We cannot hear you. We cannot hear you. I'm sorry. Try to take your headset off and your microphone off and just use your phone. Can you hear me? Yes, yes we can. Yes we can. I can't hear you very well, but if you can hear me, then without too much discomfort, I can try and say something and participate in the discussion with some thoughts. And I don't actually understand if you can hear me or not. We can. Okay. Perfect. Fine. I also need to come closer to the phone because otherwise I might not hear you. But anyway, what we put into words, Paola, needs to be shared. We shared it together, especially the fact that we put into, we underlined before the pre-COP this resolution of the parliament, which is very interesting, and it asks essentially to integrate the dimension of human rights at the heart of the NDCs that need to be presented with the Paris Agreement and with the COP26 following the Paris Agreement, because we know very well that if this dimension is not respected, also a target level that on paper might seem efficient, this would be a big hope that we have, but it wouldn't solve anything. Whereas the human rights dimension, especially for those countries, for example, Brazil, where leaders are, where the same people that try to defend human rights and the climate have serious problems and risk their lives in their role of defenders of the climate and the environment. Let's think about the Amazon forest. Another point, key point, is the future is now in the debate on the COP26, which is absolutely essential. The fact that we start a new negotiation, a new global agreement on the planet, because one of the essential points of the Paris Agreement is to make financial flows coherent with a path that gets us to 1 degree and which also supports development, and a development that is resilient to the climate. We need to put this into words. And this money, this 100 billion euros per year that needs to come from rich countries are just sufficient to face the need to adapt to climate change. And it's on adaptation that we have a gap, a financial gap, because the adaptation to climate change means that we need to invest on common goods, where the return of our investment for green finance very often is simply not there. So it's absolutely necessary that we sign a new monetary agreement. In the NDCs we say something, but it's not yet sufficient, and the weight that will put us behind COP26. In these recent studies, French economists talk about a green money, a green way of making money, and to make possible for the International Monetary Fund to make available for developing countries, which are the countries that suffer more than anyone else by debt, so they cannot allow themselves to open some debts as we did with Next Generation EU, and they're more vulnerable to the effects, the material effects of climate change. So this is a very hot topic that needs to be studied and researched more, and this is what activists need to do as well, because we know it very well. And another point that I would like to underline here is inspired by the speech delivered by Ursula von der Leyen and then re-quoted by the Austrian minister, the need to change the perception of what is possible, because we stop to say that thing we cannot do it because it's not possible. But I mean, if we stop at this, I mean, we have good examples from the past. We wouldn't have been able to go to the moon or to send spaceships to Mars, but these are things that seemed impossible, and now we can, and it seems incredible. If nobody sets a goal to do these kind of things, we need to do it to reach 1.5 degrees. If we do not give ourselves one goal, and we will not reach it. So if we give power, the decision-making power, to those who don't believe it, then we will never do it. Think putting the NASA mission to get to the moon into the hands of those who did not believe we could make it. It wouldn't have been possible. So it's also important to choose the right people that have the perception that it's possible to do these kind of things, and that have the power to guide us into our ability to navigate into unknown waters, because we need to do this as well. Thank you. Thank you, Luigi. As always, you are absolutely right on the topic, and your speech was inspiring, and I'm asking Domenico if there are other speakers that would like to talk. Yes, absolutely. Maria Cristina Pisani excuses herself, but she cannot join us because she has another event, but she thanks us very much for our work on the Milan Youth Charter. Maria Cristina Pisani is from the National Council of Youth, but now Eleonora Evi has joined us. She's a person from the European Parliament. So I leave the floor to her.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Good afternoon to everybody. I'm sorry for my connection. This is a very important day, and I would like to talk to you about the historical moment of these crucial days, with major events that are being held here in Milan. And 50,000 people marched today in Milan, and rightfully so. And young people need to be heard, and their voices need to be heard by the institutions that didn't listen to their needs and the emergency. And they need to put in place some measures that need to be concrete to address the biodiversity and climate crisis. And I say this because in these days, when the Minister Cingonani met Greta Thunberg, Vanessa Nakate, and the same thing goes for our Prime Minister Draghi, met the activists of the Fridays for Future movement. Well, they forgot to say that the blah blah that they are doing, well, they didn't give us a true sign that they want to transform this blah, blah, blah in concrete actions. And they gave us a sort of poisonous apple, because today is the last day for the plan of hydrocarbons areas. And this means that the permissions for these extractions will be available again, and people will go on and use fossil fuels, and will continue using these sources, when we know that at an international level we shouldn't take this path. And I think that this is very serious, and that's why we cannot stop here. We cannot go back. We need to be even more present to say that, above all, in the next few steps that we will take at the COP26 in Glasgow, well, they will have to listen the requests made by the youth and what, quite simply, the science says to us and has said to us for a long time. And as a member of the European Parliament, I'm following the European work, but Europe doesn't understand that we actually need urgent action to address the climate crisis, and the goals that we set for the reduction of at least 55% of greenhouse gases emission by 2030. Well, it's simply not enough. It's not what science asks us to remain well below under 1.5 degrees Celsius. And that's why the package Fit for 55, which is created to reach this goal, well, we will have to analyze this package. And we, as Greens, wrote a letter to the President von der Leyen to express our doubts on these measures and this package for laws, which addresses renewable energies, energy efficiency, proposes a date to stop selling cars that are fueled by oil. And these are actually important measures, but they are not enough. They do not allow us to accelerate the transitions that we need. For example, concerning the phase-out of combustions motors, why should we wait so long when we have the technology to change the supply chains? We are asking to do this by 2030, or maybe the taxes on the fuel for the aviation sector and also for the shipping sector. So we are finally taxing this fuel, but the European Commission thinks that it should introduce this tax in 2022. So we are giving away those 10 years that are fundamental for our clean economy. And the last thing that I want to say, which is a topic that is not discussed, above all in Italy, only a few journalists talked about this topic on television, and only some media talked about this, is the reform of the common agricultural policy, which is an enormous measure. This is about public money of European citizens, and the European Parliament will vote in November on this agreement, and we will decide how much of this money will be spent, but we are not pushing for an ecological transition in agriculture, which could be a solution for the climate crisis. So we have too many problems and battles, but we mustn't give up. I am here at the European Ideas Lab in Milan, organized by the European Green Party. And as part of this party, I want to participate in this event, and I can see a lot of involvement by citizens, and I see that they really want to be heard, and I think that this voice must be heard, and we can no longer not listen to these people, and this is an appeal for our government and our politicians, because we need it. Thank you. Eleonora? Domenico? The speakers for this sessions have finished, but Pisani can no longer be with us today. And we have the last section of our debate, which is the video that we will show.
Allora, un secondo solo. Agli utenti Zoom chiedo se riusciamo a vedere il video. Riuscite a vedere il video in questo momento? Ok. No, ok. Un secondo di ultimi problemi tecnici alla fine, però ci riusciremo a farne fronte.
Assolutamente sì.
Ok, perfetto. Ok, allora lo mando.
Dear world leaders, we ask you to stop funding fossil fuels immediately. Listen to the science, listen to the youth. Let's make the Paris Agreement a reality.
Dear young leaders, we call you to join us in demanding a green recovery for a carbon-free and just planet. The future is now. Let's make our voice heard.
Ok, lascio a
Grazie
te.
molte, Domenico, e volevo ringraziare i nostri due climate reality.
I would like to thank the two climate reality readers, Francesca Spinosi and Pietro Spataro, that collaborated on the creation of this video. And this is a message not only by Team Italy, but also by Team Europe and the various climate reality readers in Europe.
This was a message directed to the decision makers because at the COP26 in Glasgow, they will finally be able to listen to us. They need to listen and to take into consideration what the young people think, and many of the solutions that
we will share this charter, and I would like to thank our European branch. And I'd like to invite Spela on stage for closing remarks.
Greeting from the European branch. La nostra branch Europe ci ha supportato in questo.
She supported us during this event, but also during all the other events in our program this year. And their contribution is extremely important, not only for the Italian team, but also for all the other national teams. And I would like to thank our branch manager, Zot Bauer, who is not here with us today, but that is listening to us.
Grazie Paola, thank you all. Yeah, I will try brief, but yeah, it's nice to come here in person and to see what the team has been doing, engaging with the youth. And I think the team can be very proud on the document with the demands, with the charter. And I think it's what Mrs. Vanessa said before, the implementation of it now comes, is also as Grameno said on the Paris Agreement, the paper is not just a paper, so the planet doesn't care about it, but it's about the next steps and actions. And I hope that here the youth will continue on putting pressure on here in Milan on the demands that come up with very enriching process. And I would like to thank you here, the whole Italian team, for the great work and the efforts into making this happen. Yeah, so that's all for me. Thank you for inviting me as well.
Grazie molte, Spela. Thank you very much, Spela. And thank you.
Thank you,
to
Spela.
everybody.
Thank you all. And I would like to end with
by thanking our Team Italy and our Team Europe.
And all of the people who have supported us in this hybrid event. And I would also like to thank especially our technical partners. I would like to thank Converso Technology for the events of the future, especially the founder and CEO of the company. And then I would also like to thank from the bottom of my heart Gabriele Susan Vanzan, Rossana Ottolini, Fabrizia Parini, and all of the students and the students of the degree in interpretation of the Civica Interpreti Traduttori Altiero Spinelli, who made possible the interpretation of this event and our event of the 18th of September. And I would like to end our event with a quote by Al Gore, our chairman, Vice President of the United States, former Vice President and Nobel Peace Prize. A very important quote that he quoted during the COP25 in Madrid, so just before the pandemic. Hope is a renewable energy. So that's what he said, and this is an invitation that as Climate Reality Italy, Europe, and as a community at international level, we want to give all of you young activists, less young activists, those who are not interested in activism, who do not care about it, because it's important. It's important to nurture hope, because it helps us to motivate ourselves. And it also helps us to carry on and to get through the message that young people want to send across, because we can give young people a voice and also give a voice to the future, to the next and future generations, to secure a future that will be possible and livable. So I thank our partners from the Ecoteatro, and we will see you again at our next events. Thank you all, and have a good evening.